why don't you just start out just telling us a little bit about your respective festivals, a little bit of the history, philosophy, and then also some submission numbers. So part of what we want to do tonight is talk about, get a little more transparency in the process of submitting to festivals. So a lot of our audience is going to be submitting soon, and this is all totally new to them. So what kind of numbers are you seeing in terms of what you get in, and then how many you're programming?
Do you want me to
Sure.
start? So I'm the short film programmer for Chicago International Film Festival, which I'm sure many of you know. The festival is going into its 51st year, so we celebrated our 50th anniversary last year. That makes it the oldest competitive film festival in the United States. And since I look after short film programming, I can tell you that we receive somewhere in the area of 2,000 short film submissions every year. And that's kind of submissions from individual filmmakers, and we also receive packages of films from, various different film boards, the Swiss Film Institute, the Norwegian Film Institute. A lot of countries have a kind of governing body that looks after their film submissions, and they send us blocks of submissions as well. So the overall number is probably more than 2,000, but it's around there.
So those are curated films by those film boards that they basically...
Exactly. They select a number of short films every year that they will represent and send to festivals kind of en masse.
Great. Mike?
Cool. I run the Midwest Independent Film Festival here in Chicago. It's pretty unique in a couple ways. One, it's a year-round film festival. So instead of it being 10 straight days or 12 straight days, we actually hold it every first Tuesday of the month all year round. The reason we do that is to kind of create a place for the whole Chicago and Midwest filmmaking community to come together all year round. Because we found that we'd go to a fest and we'd meet some cool people, and then you don't see them for 11 and a half months until the next fest. So this is a nice complement to those fests. So it's first Tuesdays with the Midwest Independent Film Festival. The other thing that makes it unique is we only show films that are made in Chicago and the Midwest. So in order to be eligible, the film has to be made in the Midwest and have very strong connections to the Midwest and its filmmaking team. If a group from Milwaukee goes to India to make a documentary or something like that's cool. So in terms of numbers, it's different with us. So ours would definitely be under 1,000 just because literally less than 1% of all the films that are made in the world are even eligible for our fest. So it's very specific. Whereas everyone all over the world and countries might be submitting to Chicago International, we're almost more kind of searching for those great films that are made in Chicago and the Midwest. So it's a little bit different approach for programming.
Great.
Yeah, the Chicago Underground Film Festival is we just finished programming our 22nd year.
Wow.
Like literally a week ago.
When's it coming up?
It will be May 13th through 17th. Thanks for asking.
Oh, neat. Where's it at? If I
the
wanted to go see it.
At the Logan Theater in Logan Square.
Oh, okay.
Fantastic.
All the screenings are at the Logan.
Yes. This is going to be our third year at the Logan. We also take submissions from all over the world, and both features and shorts. It's a 5-day festival. We got probably, again, around 2,000 total. That included the features and the shorts this year. And like the International Festival, we get individual submissions and submissions from packages mostly from certain distributors that I work with. The Video Data Bank at the School of the Art Institute sends me a bunch of packages every year of their new acquisitions, Six Pack Films in Austria, Lux Films in London, a few other places like that. But about 2,000 total submissions in that range has been about what we expect every year. And like I said, we program films from all over the world too. So a lot of Chicago work, but also this year I know we have films from Turkey and Greece and London, UK, Ireland. I'm forgetting, but there's a lot of international films as well.
So this is a huge number that you guys are talking about. So
yeah.
What is some of the criteria for weeding out films films going on to the next level? Like, how do you guys work? How does that work for you guys?
Well, I think one thing that helps is that we have various kind of programming mandates where we're looking, for example, for a program of Chicago and Illinois-based work. So we're always kind of looking specifically for films for that program. We always have a program of animated films. We recently introduced a program of short documentaries. So with those kind of themes or genres in mind, that kind of helps us to kind of divide things up a little bit. And then we work with pre-screeners. I have a number of pre-screeners that I work with, including Mike, actually. He's fantastic.
Yeah.
And they go through and watch films and actually give them a score, give me notes and feedback. I also have, other programmers that I work with at the festival. Shorts is my specific area, but the feature programmers and documentary programmers will also look at a lot of films for me. So it's quite a kind of democratic process of slowly kind of whittling it down to a smaller amount. And then, we, from our 2000, we only show about, last year I think we showed about 65 films. So there's always, unfortunately, films that we love that we just can't find a place for. So those are always kind of those heartbreaking last-minute decisions. But yeah, that's kind of how it works.
So when some of those films that you love but you can't program, what are some of the reasons why you can't program them? Can you think of? Put you on the spot.
Well, I think, for example, curating a program of short documentaries, you might have two films that you love, but they have a similar theme or a similar aesthetic, or, for whatever reason. There's, especially because with documentaries, I think we only show about 10, and there's so many great ones. So
once you get to the love stage, then it comes down to luck. The key is how do you get to the love stage? So I would say it's truly luck almost. If a programmer loves your film, then it's really just, hey, it didn't work out, But the cool, you mentioned I pre-screen for you, I'll help out. I also pre-screen for Sundance and also for Austin Film Fest. Penny has worked with TRIBECA in the past and Palm Springs. So, the other thing about that is we know people at and Bryan's worked with a lot of other fests. So those ones that you love that don't quite make it in, actually the film that we're showing at the Midwest Independent Film Festival on Tuesday, March 3rd, a week from this Tuesday, is one that Bryan actually said to me, hey, there's this film called Dig Two Graves that was shot in Illinois that we really liked, but we didn't have room for it, so you should take a look at it. And I did, and we programmed it. So I think a lot of that really happens for the ones that you love, but you can't find a spot for. You
can definitely recommend them to other programmers, and I think also you bear in mind that filmmaker's name, and you really kind of look out for their next piece of work and kind of try and track their career and hopefully show some of their work in the future.
So the form letters that we all get as filmmakers sometimes aren't actual bullshit. They're actually
No, I mean
I try, sometimes I haven't done it yet this year, but I probably will go back and follow up on those bullshit form letters with some more personal messages to a few films that were really close. I mean, our process is very similar to yours. We use the screening committee giving me feedback and scoring things. When we sat down this year to do our final program, I'd created a document in Google Docs that had everything that was remotely being considered. And you mentioned that giving things a numerical score, and we would have the numerical score. And my festival coordinator, at a certain point, I realized that she had seen almost as much as I had. So I made her watch everything else that she hadn't seen that I had, so that when we sat down to make the final decisions, there were two of us that had seen everything, and then we could have that discussion, an informed discussion about which things to include and which things not to for various reasons. But I put together a spreadsheet that had everything ranked in our average numerical score between the two of us. And of course, everything that's way at the top of the list automatically got programmed. Then as you get down, there's things that you really like, but you don't have room, like we use a 1 to 10 scale. So if it's something's like a 9 or a 10, it's going to get programmed. If I gave it a 9 or a 10, I mean, there's people, pre-screeners that give out 9s a little more easily than I do.
You get to know, like
Right.
a 9 from Jesse might be like a 5 for
Right.
me, or
Right.
like a 5 from this other guy that
Exactly.
might actually be something you learn to.
Yeah. But then when you get down to like a 7, which is a pretty, on a 1 to 10 scale, it's a pretty respectable score, and that means there's some quality in there. But not all of the it's not room. We're showing, out of those 2,000 submissions we got this year, we're showing about 100 films in the festival. 2 are going to be installations, and one's a live cinema performance that someone's going to be doing. So it's 103 total things, but a couple of those aren't going to be projected in the theater. Doing other, but out of 1,000, that's like maybe, or 2,000, the percentage isn't high. We do, like, after 22 years, and I'm sure with the International Fest, with 50 some years, filmmakers, and we do extend an automatic waiver for the submission fee to alumni. So I'm constantly looking for new work by those people, because
Building those relationships.
for Reynolds, who I showed tonight, he's got a new piece we're going to be showing this year. He's been screening with us since like 1997 or 98. He's somebody I know, makes quality work that's always going to be interesting. He doesn't always get in. He submitted a feature last year that I passed.
But he
on.
always gets watched.
He always gets watched.
Everybody always gets
Yeah, that's true. That's important.
That is true. That's important.
That's important because people don't.
But he gets
think
watched. He always gets watched by you. I mean, that's
Right.
Every fest. All right, I know what you're saying. I literally do watch every single film that comes through my fest, but I'm dealing with a smaller number. I can tell you, when I screen for Sundance, I mean, literally 2 people will watch every film, and same with, a big one like Chicago International. Like everyone's, because I think there is a feeling like
that
this
there's
thing.
stuff just
You dudes didn't even watch my film, man. It
Right.
didn't even. Now, Bryan might not watch your film, or Penny might. Do you know what I mean? Because it's basically you've got to think of it almost like the Olympics, or I'm making it to the next round, and then I'm making it to the next round. You might just catch someone the wrong way early on and get derailed.
I will say that this year, out of that 2,000 total submissions, I watched close to 1,000 of them myself.
Fantastic.
I try to watch a large percentage of everything, a little bit of it at least
great.
myself.
But thank you for clarifying that. Yeah, because it did sound like, oh no, we don't know this dude. It's done. No, I just mean it might get. You
Sure.
want to get to the decision maker.
And-
Okay, that's the key with getting into a bigger film fest. You have to get to the decision maker. So how do you get to the decision maker? Or get past. There's a sea of 2,000 films. Well, how do I? One, you want to get seen by the decision maker if at all possible, and that's why, for getting into ones like Sundance or for Chicago International, or that, like, people will, I know for Sundance, they'll do things like, well, do you know a senior programmer there? Do you know someone at South by? Do you know Penny? Because or do you know someone that works with them? Because if you do, then you can kind of have an ambassador for your film that'll
Right.
say, hey, you have this sea of 2,000 films you have to watch, right? Well, I know this filmmaker, and if you get a chance, take a look at this one. Do you know what I mean? How can you get it so, okay, I at least know the person that had a lot to do with the final decision, had got to see it.
Yeah. So there's a lot of our audience who haven't actually started submitting to festivals yet, but when you guys do submit and you don't get in, which is going to happen a lot, you will get a letter saying, thank you very much for submitting, and they often say, we look forward to your future work. And it's just really nice and encouraging to hear that you guys mean that. That's great.
I want to see the letter that says we do not look forward
Exactly.
to the future work.
I will say there are a small
Never.
number of films that we received where that letter might apply, but not most.
So we'll go the opposite way. So what makes it a clear pick, like for you guys? Like what are some of the things that stand out for you in terms of that? And you can maybe even use the examples from today as, why you programmed what you showed us today.
Well, I think the film that I chose, which was the first film, for me an example of kind of a type of short film that I really like that is very kind of simple or deceptively simple in a way. It chooses a moment, and it's kind of in real time. It just shows us this little pivotal moment that might not seem that significant, but actually really tells us so much about those characters and their situation. And, you know, you only spend, 10, 15 minutes with Selma and her mother, but I feel like you learn so much about their dynamic and the situation that they're living in. The film's really subtle, which I think is great. It doesn't resort to any kind of tropes that you see a lot of. There's no sort of dramatic music when the shots start coming, but it's still, I think really, really tense. The performances are great. It's very kind of intimate, a lot of handheld camera, great point of view, like showing you the child's point of view. So for me, yeah, a simple film, often, especially for shorts, because you're just kind of starting out, is more effective than a really ambitious film that's almost trying to cram a feature film structure into like 20 or 30 minutes, which I think is like generally something to avoid. And of course, like everything I say has exceptions. And like I think something that was really cool about that program was that we saw a narrative film, an animated film,
it was a cool,
a
diverse
documentary, and an experimental film. And those are basically kind of the four main categories that we show. So it was really, we didn't confer at all, so that was kind of nice.
It was kind of perfect. You guys made my job so easy. It was great. Yeah.
So it's like there's no one right way to do it, but I would say when you're making your first short, like often less is more, and keep it simple. And yeah, my personal taste is that I like kind of really personal, sort of intimate stories, but that doesn't mean that another style of film wouldn't also appeal to me. And also we're thinking about programs and having a diverse program where there's lots of different types of storytelling. But yeah, for me, I guess the reason that, and The Chicken is also like played everywhere. It played Sundance. It's won like tons of awards, so I thought it would be a good one to show you. You just really are in that world. And I think like that's a really amazing thing for a short to be able to do.
That's the key for me, which I'll just jump right in, because you're in that world. Like, are you bringing someone into a world? Are you creating an absorbing environment with your film? Are you bringing them in to that world? I think that's the main thing. Like, are you drawn in? Do you move forward? Because a lot of times I think with films, we don't really, you want to transport someone into a world that they don't know. I think sometimes with films, the thing that'll derail it pretty early on is if, well, they're not really putting this whole environment together for us. Are you bringing someone into that world? And for me, most important, do you care about the people that are on the screen? It doesn't matter if they're rabbit owners or if they're on fire,
burning
if they're
house.
living in a burning house, or if it's a little kid from a country you've never been to and might never be to. Do you care about them? Are you emotionally invested? That's what, for me, I'm always like, am I emotionally invested? Do I care about what's happening to them?
And they only have often like 10 minutes to get you emotionally invested, which is what makes it, I think, so difficult.
It's kind of what I loved about Burn when I programmed it was it's an abstract, really non-narrative film, but it is a very emotional film because, I think it's pretty obvious that he's trying to convey like express a very literal thing that's showing some kind of psychological thing that's going on in this household, in this family, where everything is burning down around them and they're just going about their daily lives as though nothing is going on. I think there's like a heavy emotional content of what he's trying to express. He's just not doing it in a conventional narrative way.
Right.
Reynolds had been screening with us for a few years before he did this film, and this was part of a trilogy of films that he had done. The first one involved, they had constructed these like life-size mannequins, and it was Super 8, but it was these mannequins like falling off of buildings and the Brooklyn Bridge and things, and it was just like watching bodies falling to their deaths and things. And then there's a film after that called The Drowning Room that was very similar to Burn, but the opposite. It was all shot underwater. and it was people going like daily life, but completely submerged underwater. He's also does work as an installation artist and things, and he works in both kinds of things.
But you're invested. You're emotionally invested.
Yeah,
in what-
and
what's happening.
that's tricky. With Cuff, we show a lot more of the experimental side of film, and so there's often kind of a distancing, and like it's harder to get to that emotional core when there's not a narrative or performance. But I think when it's done really well, you can find that. You know, I mean, I think Stan Brackage's hand-painted films have emotional content if you know how to break through and decipher what's going on in it.
And when you talk about the length, you were saying less is more sometimes with some films. Something to keep in mind. So Wendy told us you have 15 minutes to work with, right? She told each of us that. And I sent her a couple films, and I was like, well, here's a couple choices for me. This one's 4 minutes, this one's 3 minutes. And she kind of liked my second choice, which was the bunny film. And then I kind of was like, well, I really like the first one. Well, we showed both. You know why? Mm-hmm. Because they were both under 5 minutes. So, because I sometimes have a tough time getting through to people on like, when you make a 17-minute film or talking to someone that makes a 25-minute film, which can be amazing. We have a friend, Jennifer Reeder, who just took a 26-minute film to Sundance and a 30-minute, maybe a 35-minute film to Berlin, 32-minute film to Berlin. So, but think you saw it right there, right? So both of those films that I wanted to put in went in. If you'd had two 15-minute films, you would have to decide. So I mean, that's,
Jennifer's a great example.
Right. But your film has to be so much better.
And what I was going to point out is that these recent films that are 32, 30-minute pieces, she's been working for like close to 20 years as a filmmaker.
Right.
When we showed White Trash Girl at Cuff in 1997, it was that was a 10-minute short. And, you know, I say you have to earn every minute that you make.
That's the best way to put it.
You know, so the longer, you know, we show feature films at Cuff, but we have like 10 this year.
Right.
So each one of those has to earn that entire time slot. A 10-minute short has to earn that piece of that shorts program and work with the other films in that program.
It's easier to earn 4 minutes than it is 34 minutes. I mean, if we're just going to look at it just from a practical perspective, it's easier to.
Yeah, we have a film I'm showing this year. This guy actually wrote me on Facebook a little bit before he submitted, and I waived his fee because I actually at one point thought he was an alumni.
You're totally screwed now. These guys are all going to find you.
We're going to get to waivers
well, this is
in a
somebody
minute.
I thought he was actually said to him in our writing because I knew his name, and I was like, "You're an alumni, right?" And he's like, "No, I've never gotten in." And he had this new short, and it's less than a minute. It's super short, and I was like, "Well, that's a really programmable length," you know. And like, it got in because like, well, it's only, you know, it's.
I'm so glad you guys brought that up because it comes up all the time with the students. You know, we're constantly addressing this idea of, are you making this film as an exercise? Are you making this film to try and get it into festivals? These are considerations, and that it's nice to hear that you can still get a 32-minute film in, but you have to earn it. I think that's a great way.
That would have been the only film we showed today.
Right.
Just think about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think also if you've made a 32-minute film, then do some research and look at some festivals are more inclined to show long-form short films. Some European festivals, I think, are more inclined to show
definitely like a festival like Oberhausen.
Oberhausen, exactly. You know, I think BERLINALE show longer shorts. It does
Rotterdam,
tend to be, American film festivals generally tend to have more rigid kind of time constraints, or
so
what's
a ballpark, would you say? Like if you're looking at American versus European, like what's the sweet spot for length?
I mean, officially we accept, at Chicago International, we accept short films up to 40 minutes. But I would say it's very rare that we show one that's longer than 25 minutes. You know, now and again there's an exception. But those films are challenging to program, and a 37-minute long short kind of overwhelms a shorts program. So then maybe you could program it with another film around that length, but then you have to find a thematic connection. So I would say that officially our deadline is 40 minutes, which I think is the same for most major festivals.
The key is overwhelm, right? That's the key. Look, pretend you're programming and I'm going to show a 35-minute film. Like, one, not only does that have to be a badass film, because whether
it's taking the space
it's
of
taking
3
the
films.
space of 3 to 5 films, but it's also like, does it overwhelm? And how do I serve that correctly? Because now if I lead in with a bunch of 5 to 7 minute films, and then all of a sudden there's a 35-minute film, that's going to seem like an hour and a half film. Do you know? So it just creates.
Yeah, weirdly, a
it
long
becomes,
short can feel a lot longer than
Right.
even like a short feature.
Right. Especially if you've just watched a 5-minute, a 5-minute, 3-minute, a 10-minute. So you almost have to kind of go like 5, 3, 5, 7, 10, 15. You kind
Is
of
your
have
secret
to.
formula?
That's the
Programming?
well, you have to like ease people into it. You can't show
I'll
a bunch
say-
of super shorts and then be like, and here's a 40-minute piece.
Yeah.
Because people are going to be like, this is.
No, definitely.
But almost-
yeah, that's the formula.
Almost always, I'll say the longer shorts play at the end of the program.
Right.
Because they are going
They
to
have
because it's kind of hard to follow it.
So it's kind of like your headliner or your anchor.
Yeah.
It just has
It's
to
the
be.
anchor.
It's
We
the
call
anchor.
it that.
Okay, cool. I do
Yeah.
too. See, look at that. We didn't even know we used the same word.
So let's go to the other side. What are some of the big no-nos in terms of what not to do? I mean, contacting programmers, and is there anything errors with packaging?
I don't think there's anything wrong with contacting programmers.
Okay.
I mean, I think there's something wrong with hounding programmers.
Yeah.
So I would say if you write to a programmer, if you know a programmer, you have an introduction like we talked about, sending them one email, especially if you have relevant information, the film's not in Illinois, because we have a form where you let us know if it's an Illinois production, but maybe it's not an Illinois production, but your producer's from Chicago and they would love to bring the film home, or just these little things where that's not going to make us program the film, but it might make us say, oh, it's just a little trigger. And like we're saying, there's 2,000 films. So it's always good, I think, to just try and get the name of your film in the programmers' minds. And I think to write a nice email and say, here's some background info. Maybe my film just got into these festivals that I didn't know about when I submitted. So I'm just, because you also let the programmers know what festivals your film's played at, but if it's been programmed since you submitted, you can let people know a little update. It's been selected to these festivals, and again, that's not going to make us program it. But if you tell us your film's just gotten into a really great festival, it's going to make us want to watch it.
As long as you're keeping the emails short to the point and updating relevant
Yeah,
information.
and I would say
it's not
probably
too-
just one email.
Yeah, you don't want to hound the programmers, but
Do you guys have any good stories of any tales of cautionary tales for
Well, I
young
mean,
filmmakers?
I think everybody's experienced the filmmakers that just write too much or write
Yeah.
these really long emails, or just send weekly updates of my film has gotten into this festival, and you just delete it. So,
at a certain point, it's
but I think that contacting a programmer once is totally appropriate and not a no-no at all. And and certainly if you are an alum or if you have had work at that festival in the past,
when
you
I
should definitely
mentioned
let the programmer
that
know.
we extend the alumni waivers too, that kind of goes beyond just like the filmmaker's new film, but like if a filmmaker writes me as who I've programmed and they write me and say, I saw this film or I know this filmmaker and I really think that you should check out this film of theirs, I'm going to be a little more inclined to not expect the entry fee and be like, we're showing a film this year that just won an award in Berlin recently. It's the second film that this filmmaker has submitted to CUF. The first one didn't get in, but a good friend of mine in New York knew this woman, and she had a feature-length documentary that she was having a really hard time getting into festivals, I guess including ours. But he wrote me and said, I think this is really interesting work. And I was happy to look at it. It didn't end up getting programmed. It was interesting. But this new film, you know, she wrote me and said, oh, Michael Galinsky introduced us through email a couple of years ago. I've got this new short. And it turned out the producer is a friend of mine from Chicago who lives in New York now, and I knew the lead actor, and I had some, you know. So I was, of course, like, oh, absolutely, I'll take a look at it, and we thought it was great, and then we programmed it, and then a week after we programmed it, found out that it had won like a Silver Bear in Berlin, so that was exciting.
That's great.
So yeah, the outreach is okay if you want a cautionary tale for me. One, if you, and I was gonna ask you guys what you thought about this, but if you ask for feedback on your film, like it didn't get in, and the guy writes
tell
back
people in the rejection letter we send out now that we don't provide feedback.
Yeah, I think that's
because
really smart.
I'm too busy putting together this festival. I don't have
you put
time.
that in the email?
No, but that's the you know, like that's the truth of it is.
This stuff takes time, dude.
I really don't have the time to respond to every email back asking. And one cautionary tale about when you do lose gracefully if you don't get and 99% of all filmmakers do, but there's always
that's high.
One
that's
or
high.
two.
That's way high.
Okay, but there's always there's always a few where you get those angry emails after the rejection letters go out that are like accusatory, that think you don't watch, you didn't even watch my film. I guarantee
you definitely
almost
shouldn't do that because your film might have been one of the ones that was really nearly
Right.
selected, and you don't want
Although
to
rarely
mess
is
up
it.
your relationship with the project.
Rarely are the angry responses from people who are even close. Usually it's the people who, that's an indication that you're focusing your energies in the wrong places and it's not showing up on the screen, and you probably are getting rejected by a lot of film festivals and being very frustrated. There's probably a reason.
Right. So for the record, and we don't even say we'll give you feedback. We don't, but I got an email from someone that was like, I don't know what happened here. Why? Because we accept music videos as well. By the way, I know you guys work on a lot of music videos as well. You can send all those to us. And he just started going. He was like, I've played with all these Grammy winners and this and that, and I knew, or he was like, can you give me any feedback from the screen? He did it. He did the whole like, I'm just trying to learn. I'm just trying to get better. I'm new to this whole thing. So I was like, do I really want to do this? And I just wrote him back and said, we just felt the story didn't progress. It didn't heighten as it went through. This music video that he just shot on a pier with a bunch of people breakdancing and shit like that. I was like, okay.
Didn't have a narrative arc.
Didn't have much of a narrative arc. I tried to and I kept it simple and wrote. And he wrote back and just went. And I was like, okay, I'm going to spend the next 2 hours emailing back and forth with this guy, which I did. And then towards the end, I was kind of like, by the way, in the future, if you ask for feedback, this isn't, meant to be like, let me tell you why you were wrong, Mike, for not putting this film in. Then he proceeded over every week he would send me an email like, got into this film festival. I swear to God. Right. And, of course the fest was like, Oakton Community College, music film, music video showdown or something like that, And it was like, guess you were wrong about this one, smiley face. And I was like, and I literally just wrote him back and I was like, yep, that was a great one, and just wrote him back, But it's, the more you email, when they say just email, one email, because the more you email someone telling them why they're, about more we feel like, okay, this person's desperate to get into like a film festival. Do you know what I mean? So you just, put yourself in the shoes of the programmer when you're thinking about communicating with them,
I think if you do want feedback, I believe the DC Shorts Fest in Washington, D.C. have a feedback policy
option,
where they will always give you feedback on your film, which is
and there's other
kind of
ones
an
you can
interesting-
opt in for it, like you can request it.
Austin Film Fest does too,
Oh, they
because
do?
they actually, when I'm screening it, they say, be constructive in your criticism.
I
Which
would
I
definitely
do
give
try
very
to be,
different
like,
instructions to our pre-screeners if I thought the comments were going to be read by the filmmakers.
Right.
Always.
So speaking of communication, Mike, we were talking before this event about sort of your first
Our little-
glimpse.
yeah.
You want to talk about the titles and.
So I was talking with Wendy. You guys will maybe appreciate this because we're winding down. We're getting to the Q&A soon. So I'm an actor when I'm not running the film fest, and I never at any point in my life said I want to be a film fest director. It just kind of
Does anybody ever,
happened.
maybe,
I don't know.
I don't know. I didn't
feel
say
like
that.
some people do. I have some people that volunteer for the fest that are like, I want to run my own fest someday. You didn't either?
No.
What? I actually came from a biology background, so I come from a science background, and then I somehow made it into acting, which is just because I'm like, who knows why? And we want attention, you know. My little sister was like, "You just really want attention," and then like 5-10 years later, I'm like, "You're right. You're absolutely right. That's really all it was." But so I come from a science background. So in science, you're always looking at variables or what are the things you can change. And so I started to just look at, because I was I'm seeing all these films. What are the variables that affect your impression of a film before you even watch a film? So I'm just going to ask you, just think for a sec and just shout them out. What are some things about a film? Think of a film you've seen. What are some things about that film or how it's presented to you that can affect your opinion of it or what you think of it before you even watch a second of it?
Title.
The title, all right. A preview, a trailer, right? If I see a trailer for a film before I watch the film, that's definitely going to affect, right? Any other ideas? Say actors, right? Cast. If I hear this person and that person is in it, that's going to affect my opinion. Or if I hear that I don't know anybody that's in it, that'll
DVD
affect.
cover.
DVD cover, right?
That's a good, interesting thing to bring
Less
up.
so
The
now
DVD
because it's all linked.
The DVD
Right.
cover situation.
Yeah.
I actually think that putting too much effort into your packaging and the stuff around your film is a disservice. I've actually wrote a filmmaker once that said, because sometimes people will submit their film and we get a T-shirt and a fancy DVD. One year, I got this
I
weird.
got branded condoms once.
Yeah.
Whoa.
I think I know that film. But one year I got this like metal like desk box kind of thing that had like pencil, it had all this stuff that was put in just to submit the film. And
Did you watch it?
I did. I don't remember it.
Oh, okay. All right.
I did watch it, but I don't remember it. And all that money that went into that should have gone into, and if you're going to put that much into marketing, put it into the marketing after you get into the festival. Mm-hmm. Market to the audience that's going to be buying tickets, not just to the programmer.
I'll add to that and say, if you're gonna go for the DVD, for a nice DVD package, because some people, even if they send an online link, also want to send a DVD, either go all the way or none of the way, if that makes sense. Like, the worst thing you can do is try and have a really nice DVD cover and package and actually not have the finances to do that. Do you know what I mean by that? It would be better to just submit like just a black DVD cover with a DVD in it that just has the name of it nicely printed on it and hand that, rather than trying to make something with some productions that looks like you kind of pieced it together. Because now just think about this. What are the things that affect before the DVD even goes in the player? And that's one, if I see kind of a
Film is an
half-assed...
aesthetic medium, so if you have a bad-looking cover,
Right.
it's...
They pieced it together. They kind of... Then before I even put it in, I'm talking more subconsciously. It's not like I'm putting it in being like, okay, but you just subconsciously, it's preparing you for something to be kind of half-assed. If it's
For me personally at this point, I mean, most of our submissions now, and it's changed drastically in the last 2 years, but most of our submissions now are coming to us as Vimeo links and things, and the number of physical DVDs we're receiving is dropping, which I think is great.
I was going to ask you guys about that. I mean, has that been a good movement?
For
We
me,
don't have
it's
time to
been
get into
great.
it so much, but just even the platforms, it used to be just all DVDs, and then finally Without a Box, which was the only game in town for a long time, was doing the online screeners, which I have to say, as a filmmaker, I was disappointed in the quality
terrible.
and terrible.
Without a
But
Box was
there's,
terrible.
And so there's great new Film Freeway. There's a few of them that have been coming up that have been really putting quality into it, and I was curious what you guys think about that change.
Yeah. We just started using Film Freeway this year. They're great. They use Vimeo and their own proprietary screening thing. I'm seriously considering dropping Without a Box next year and just using Film Freeway. We didn't get as many submissions through Film Freeway as we did through Without a Box this year, but I have a feeling in another year that's going to change. I really like the online screeners that are good because it makes it so much easier to share that information with our pre-screening committee. Although I did a panel similar to this a few months ago with one of the programmers from TRIBECA, and she said she wants DVDs.
Interesting.
She doesn't like online screeners. And there are issues with the online screeners. Sometimes they don't play properly.
I think they work better for shorts than for features, and a number of the feature programmers I've spoken to still prefer to have the DVD. I also like the fact that and I think this is something we talked about discussing, was that not all of our films come through submissions. Some of them I will research and read about, and see that a filmmaker who I love has a new film that played at whatever film festival, and contact them. And I used to have to wait then for often more than a week or two if they were in Europe for the DVD to arrive. Now they send me the link and I have it the next day, and it's really
that's great.
It's certainly very freeing.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think you should send both if you're gonna you should always have an online screener. You just should. But I would rather see a DVD of it than an online. I like having the option.
So you're at both.
I would say send both. But
Belts.
if you're
Belt
only
and
sending
suspenders?
one, I said what?
Belt and suspenders.
That's right.
I think that a number of festivals are actually starting to
all at once.
only accept online.
If you're only sending one, I would say send the online. But if you just have to make sure that you're going to be representing your film, because especially Without a Box, but even sometimes with Vimeo, you might have a film that has some really exceptional visuals that might not have the impact that you want them to have if you would send a Blu-ray. So.
I know that this year Palm Springs Shortfest, which is one of the largest I think it's the largest in the U.S., has gone online only. They don't accept DVDs anymore.
Interesting.
You have to have an online screener. You just do. Yeah. At this point, it's crazy how far it's come, because I'd say, 7 years ago, no one had, in the last 5 years, 5 years ago, no one had them.
I saw this game change once before when the transition went from VHS tapes to DVDs, and it was 1 year we are like, oh, I have a DVD player now. I can start taking submissions on DVD, and we got a few. The next year, there's a few more, and then it was like this overnight. Everybody was able to author DVDs at home.
He's been doing this for 22 years, so his
which
is longer than anybody into this has been alive. How does that make you feel, my brother? They weren't even alive yet.
I'm way over feeling old. I don't care anymore.
Hey, well, I was going to do that titles thing.
Yeah, so let's come back to that, and then we'll do
all right,
Q&A.
so we were talking about things that can affect your impressions of a film. And so the last time I was chatting with some folks, I've become fascinated with the title of a film. And there was actually, recently, I had a stack of DVDs at home, and because I told you, I come from a science background, so I became fascinated with, what are all the different things that affect even subconsciously, my impression of the film before I even put it in. And I took a stack of films, and I went down with a friend of mine and just started rattling off the titles. And we were able to, just for the heck of it, I mean, they all got their fair shake. We still watched them all and evaluated them. But just to see what was the genre, what was the film going to be about, and did we think it was going to be good or not? And literally, we got it to around 70, 80% as to which were the films that were going to be, that were going to move on and which weren't. And it was pretty fascinating. By the title, you can tell so much about the film, which also you have to recognize that, because if your film is something very different from the title, then you have to be careful about, make sure, you have to realize the power of your title. So I'm going to throw out a few titles here, all right? What you guys are going to do is, and I'm going to ask you, I'm going to say the title, then I'm going to ask you what the genre is, And yeah, might ask you to tell me a little bit what's it about, and then tell me if you think it's going to be good or not. How about that?
We get to play too?
You can play too. You can play too.
As long as I can play.
So I've got 6 or 7 titles here. So the first one, and these are a range of films in terms of like ones that I know are bad and ones that are actually at some, they're going to be at some fest this year. So the first one is Heaven is Hell. That's the title. So Heaven is Hell. What is the genre? What's it gonna? Drama, right?
Horror.
Horror. Maybe some horror. What?
Romance.
Romance.
And we learn about our audience.
This
I
guy.
would say the title does not make me. That doesn't bode well for this film. I don't like
This is
the
great.
title.
Yeah.
Right? I don't either. Right? Wait. Is this film gonna be good or bad? Probably gonna be bad, right? And if the person that made the film called Heaven is Hell is watching, I apologize. But I mean, it wound up being not so good. But just think, you've never seen this. You haven't seen a lick of it. You don't know any you know nothing about it, okay? But if you had that DVD in your hand right now, before you even put it in the player, you've thought, you know what? You have an expectation for genre. You have an expectation kind of what it's going to be about. And you might not, say out loud, well, this title sucks. This is going to be terrible. But in your head, it's kind of coming together. Night Owls. Night Owls.
I feel
What
like it's going to
genre?
be like a swingers drama kind of. Like
I think it's like a buddy
bar
comedy.
Guys. Buddy, yeah.
Buddy comedy? Yeah. Swingers comedy. I don't know.
No, I meant like the
But
movie.
like
I meant like the movie Swingers. Like a bro.
never
Maybe
seen
like
those
erotica.
guys.
Some
Yeah.
swingers
No, I know
that
what
are
you mean,
also
yeah.
buddies.
Right.
Like
And
bar,
it-
like
and-
set in a bar.
Animation. All right. Do you think it'll be good or not so good? It's okay if you don't know. Curious? I'd watch it. All right. So that one's actually premiering at South by Southwest next month. It's called Night Out. So, but yeah, and it's a buddy flick. They're out and about. Yeah. But right. You win. But that title again tells you so much about the film. Except for this erotica guy over there. But Jackie doesn't want to get married.
Rom-com.
Brian just
Rom-com.
winced at that.
First of all, that title's way too long.
Right.
Yeah,
I think you either go really
It's
short or
like-
really long. But
Yeah.
It's a summation of this is exactly what this. Jackie doesn't want to get married. I know exactly what the plot of this film is.
it's
Are you
the
sure
last
that's
I
not
line.
the
don't know that I
synopsis?
want to see it.
Right.
Don't tell me this one's at South by Southwest.
It's not.
No, I didn't think so.
But it was. Do you guys think it'll be? Are you interested?
No.
No. All right. It wound up being kind of middle of the road, but it was a rom-com, and it was. It's okay, I think, for a title to tell. It's okay that Jackie Doesn't Want to Get Married tells you it's a rom-com, and do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The problem is you don't want to name your film Jackie Doesn't Want to Get Married if it's more like if it's a horror
comedy.
film about. Right.
Yeah.
Right. You've got to realize the impact. So a couple more.
Is she end up getting married?
I don't even remember.
Oh, it's a romantic comedy. She got
I don't
married.
even remember.
Wait for the sequel.
You know what happened. She got married to the
But not
guy's.
to the
right,
guy that
guy's
she was
Best
like-
friend.
engaged to.
Yeah,
but the guy's
exactly.
best friend
Right.
that was kind of geeky.
She saw him in a new light.
All right. This one will be Strapped.
Yeah.
Strapped. Someone in the back. What genre?
Muscle building, muscle makers.
That's a genre?
Gang
Gangs?
documentary.
Strapped?
Or gang
Good or bad?
menace to society.
Bad.
You think it'll be a good film?
Ooh, it's kind of half and half. Yeah.
All right.
Those people who
It was
like
one about
drive.
gangs. It was the one about gang warfare and stuff, and actually, it was not too good. All right, two more. Chuck Norris versus communism.
It's going to be awesome.
Yes.
I think I've read about that film.
So what do you think the film will? What do you think it'll be about? Action. Chuck Norris versus communism. Are you
Action comedy.
intrigued? Do you want to see it?
Snakes on a plane.
There you go. It was at Sundance. It's a documentary actually about someone that was using Chuck Norris, like I don't remember exactly, like commercials or illustrations to like combat the Cold War and kind of thing.
I
So
think the wacky juxtaposition title can
yeah,
work
for me,
well.
I saw you get a list of 150 films that are at Sundance, and I saw Chuck Norris versus Communism, and I was like, I've got to see Chuck Norris versus Communism. I don't know what it's about. I actually didn't wind up getting to see it, but think about that. Now pretend there's 2,000 films. You know, they're all going to get watched, but if you just even that little twinge, you're like, oh, I'm curious what this one's about. And at the same time, I'm not like, this one is going to be a disaster. You know, so we're.
I have an anecdote from this year's submissions. We had a feature. Again, apologies if the guy who made this film is watching on YouTube right now. But it came in a really nice packaging that looked like it was ready to go right on the shelf at the DVD store,
Yeah.
you know, if they still existed. It was called Dirty Shield. And it had and I like knew immediately what
We'll
it
end
was.
on that one.
And first of all, my first thought was like, wasn't this already a TV series?
Right.
And the pre-screener, I gave him the DVD, and he looked at it, and I looked at it. You know, I was like, have fun with that one. And his comment when he's filled out his sheet said, "There's a cop. He's dirty." You know, that's all he wrote, and he gave it like a 4.
Right.
You know.
Right.
But what I wanted to bring that up for is the Chicago Underground Film Festival is clearly not the festival for Dirty Shield.
Or for Jackie doesn't want to get married.
Or for Jackie doesn't want to
Probably.
get married.
So what I would have brought that up to say, do your research and don't just submit your films to every festival out there. And figure out, like, look at what kind of films do they program? Who gets programmed? How many, you know, you guys are all young students, so how many students' films get programmed versus films from kind of more established directors and things? How many genre, if you do horror films,
Right.
send your film to Fantasia in Montreal, or festivals that specialize in genre films.
I have a friend that submitted to literally 75 film festivals with a short that he made. 75 film festivals.
What's
And
the
in my
submission
head,
fee for the shorts at the International Festival?
Currently, I think it's early bird, so I think it's 20 for students and 30 for non-students. So that's another thing, is just look out for the different deadlines, because there's usually early bird, regular, and then the late deadline, and the price goes up.
I'm going to make that my last question, because it comes up a lot with students. With the different deadlines, does it make a difference when they submit?
I think actually early bird is, if you can make the early bird deadline for a festival you're interested in, do it, because A, you're going to save money. B, if it's a good film, you use that phrase, fall in love with it earlier, and then the rest is luck.
Right.
Well, you've got a lot more time for that romance to happen. If you think it's really strong, I've got a whole lot of time where I haven't seen that many films yet where that one stood out because it came in early. And if it holds my interest as I'm programming other things, you know, watching more and more submissions,
Now
and
it's
I
the
still
front runner.
remember that one, that's going to help. Whereas if you wait till the final last chance deadline, we're overwhelmed with films at that point. Where we're trying, like, all right, we have to have the festival program by this date.
And every film needs to get seen. So there's a point where the goal of the festival is simply we just have to make sure every film gets seen, and
So
you're
the
on a
later
much
you
shorter
wait,
leash
the tougher
in
it
terms
gets,
of you know.
And like we were saying about how you might have some films that you really like, but they're similar, and you have to make those choices.
The
If
one
your
that you watch
film-
first is going to stand out.
Yeah, exactly. And also, just going back to fees, it's always worth looking out for the numerous film festivals that don't actually charge submission fees. A lot of the European ones, for example, some of the really great ones don't. So definitely consider that option as well.
Great. There's so many more questions I have for you guys, but we can't be here all night. I want to open
Hopefully
it up to
they
you
have some of
guys.
those
I know,
questions.
exactly. So we're gonna. There's a microphone back there. The light's about to come on, and I'd ask you guys to please get up and go over there so that we can hear you and the recording can hear you. So just line up behind there, I realized I totally missed an opportunity in not calling this everything you wanted to know about film festivals, but we were afraid to ask. So please get up there and ask. There's no one at the mic. Come on. You know
Yeah,
you
they're
have
going.
questions.
It just takes a little
Yeah.
while. It's like a game show. Look, she's got us so far to walk,
Exactly.
but we're gonna watch you walk every step. No,
We
just
should
kidding.
have like little music.
You know, all that social network stuff. You know, find us on Facebook and Midwest and Twitter. Facebook and Twitter. You can contact us through our respective websites, probably, and drop us a line through Facebook. Reach out to us. Let us know. You know, if you have other questions. I speak for myself. I know you guys. If you had a question about something, you know, we'll answer it for you if you had a real specific question.
I'd also throw out this last comment as people are lining up. Go to festivals, even when you don't have a film yet. You know, especially since you live here, Chicago has so many great festivals: International, Cuff, Midwest Indie, Latino.
Yeah.
I mean, you can go down the list. Onion City, all these festivals that do different things. Volunteer at festivals. Most of the people that work on Cuff with me now haven't been doing it for 22 years. Most of them started off volunteering, like sitting at a table during the festival, and now they're helping to program and things and learning, because they're meeting filmmakers and making contacts. Like now they know somebody at Sundance,
Right.
if they have a work to submit there.
Totally. Yeah, if you're going to volunteer with a fest, just work your ass off. Just do it.
Yeah.
You just work your ass off, because I feel like film festivals is one of those areas where if you do work your ass off with a fest, you can really move up the ranks relatively
Or if you
quickly.
want to become a filmmaker, you're going to meet lots of
Yeah, Joe
filmmakers as
Swanberg
well.
started off
Filmmakers.
working at the International Fest.
He did, yeah.
And I know a lot of filmmakers now that I know a bunch that volunteered at Sundance, and also that, I mean, I know the people that, you know, are programming at Chicago International just started at a lower level with Chicago International, and it's about relationships, right? If you're going to go into the trenches with someone and plan this monstrous film festival, you're not going to put something out on Craigslist or, you know, you want it to be people that have put in their time with you. So go volunteer, and just if you do, just do more than you're supposed to do.
Josh?
Well, first of all, thank you so much. What an amazing wealth of information. I mean, really helpful. I have two questions about turnoffs.
I like talking about turnoffs.
Yeah, let's do that. The first one is it a turnoff to get a DVD with just Sharpie with the name written on it and like a length of time and in a jewel case?
Depends how neat your handwriting is.
Yeah.
Seriously?
Sort of.
Oh yeah.
I mean, we talked a little bit about that earlier, but I would prefer with DVDs to not have a fancy case and just have a plain white sleeve, but have it clearly labeled with the name of your film, your name, your contact, like email or phone number, like some contact information, and the running time.
Printed or Sharpie?
It depends on how
Truly,
it's
you've got to listen to what Penny said. It depends, and it sounds silly, but I mean, I've gotten DVDs where there's just shit written all over the DVD.
But I've
Sorry
also
if it's
gotten DVDs where it's printed, but it's printed in such a way where like the label is going to peel off and get stuck in my DVD player. Or
Right.
something. So there's
Multiple factors.
it basically.
But
If, you have
if you're gonna
neatly-
write nicely, okay. But because if it's just kind of scribbled on there, remember we just talked for the last significant amount of time about those first impressions. We now have this in our hands. It's sloppy. I can barely even read it. It looks like they just kind of. Well, now I'm putting this. Think about what that. I have not seen a second of this DVD, but I'm thinking, well, this person's kind of half-assed and organized.
But
You know what I
would
mean?
put the information on the actual disc, because sometimes you get a DVD and all the information I just said you should have is all on the little sleeve, but there's nothing on the disc.
Right.
You got to assume that,
That
you know,
won't
with
go well.
this pile, I'm going through as many DVDs as I can get through that night when I'm programming. I'm not necessarily going to get it right back into that sleeve when I'm supposed to. And if the
That's why I'm so happy about the shift to online
Me too.
streaming.
Online. Yeah.
Me too.
Makes it easier.
And make
this
sure
is
that your
becoming
DVD
less
works
of an
as well.
issue.
More
But-
turnoffs.
Yeah.
The more turnoffs? Good. I got one more, and I'll pass the mic. Like logos or intro animations at the beginning before the film starts off, like real production companies, fake production companies. How does that? I know it's also part of the impression thing. I'm on the same sort of
I think we
Yeah.
prefer not to have
Yeah.
them.
go right to the movie. Let's see what you got.
I think that's the preference, yeah.
Again, if you are going to have one, it better be well executed. I mean, it's better without it, but worse than all of it is if you have that animation at the beginning and you're just, and it's,
And what if it's like super flashy and suddenly feels like it's like maybe overproduced?
I think that's a turnoff. Sure, if something looks like you put more effort into that little intro thing at the
Motion
beginning, and then
graphic.
the film starts,
Yeah.
and you're like,
That's why I'm checking.
yeah.
All right.
I
thank
do
you.
like the fake production companies. I
do
kind
like
of
them.
miss those. In the '90s, everybody at Cuff had like a fake production company listed in the source list of the program, and some of them were really funny.
I still see a lot of the fake
Yeah,
production
I
companies.
like those.
Nice. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
This mic significantly.
funny.
Or just
There you
take
go.
it
Yeah,
off.
just there you go. There you go.
Go from the
Just
tallest
take-
person to the shortest
Yeah,
person.
there you go.
So you kind of mentioned it a little bit early on that a lot of people might not know about, or like, who cares about how you started programming? But I actually do. I would love to be a film programmer at a festival, but I don't really know how to get started, and I'm actually not a film student, just a film geek, I guess. So how would you say is the best way to kind of get started on that?
Volunteer.
Yeah.
Probably be the first thing.
Yeah, being a volunteer at festivals is definitely the best way to get your foot in the door and meet people. And if you work, like Mike said, work your ass off, you're going to get, I mean, I'm always going to give more responsibility to somebody who's willing to take more responsibility on without being asked.
And just realize most volunteers flake, okay? So many volunteers flake. So a volunteer that comes out and is like, I'm gonna do all this stuff, and then they don't do it, not only are they missing out on an opportunity, but they're actually put a huge drain on our time. So when I say work your ass off, by working your ass off, you're getting past like 80% of the other volunteers, because half of them are gonna kind of flake out. Do you know what I mean? And then you can beat another third of them out by simply doing more than what's asked of you. Be on time and over deliver. I think that.
Or you could do what I did and how I became a programmer by starting a festival and saying I was
That's
a
what I
programmer.
was going to say. I just started off programming.
Programmer.
I used to work in a gallery, and they had a cinema space that didn't have much programming going on in it, and I was really interested in programming, so I just kind of offered to start programming that space once a month. And it turned this was in the UK where I'm from, but it turned into a really kind of fun, dynamic monthly showcase of short films and a great place for filmmakers to meet. So from that, then I was actually offered a proper programming job at a film festival, and then came here. So, and Mike, I'm sure that you started Midwest yourself
Yeah,
as
I
well.
started the Midwest Independent, and it came from that as well. I mean, I was an actor that there was this very casual monthly short film showcase where they were putting films on a wall, and I went to as an actor because I was like, well, if I want to be in these films, I should probably show up and talk to these people that are making it. And then gradually, I kept bringing people out to it and just kind of volunteered, got involved, and then eventually got involved in improving it. And then so much so that I was like, okay, well, now we have to start this as a fest that can get some national recognition and be kind of an official, strong thing for the community. If you're going to start your own film festival, the one piece of advice I would give you, which I'm positive about, is you have to have a specific mission statement for that festival. That's something that you can stand behind and that you're passionate about. Okay, there are still a few too many festivals out there that are like, well, we want to show great films.
There's a few too many
Right.
festivals
There's
out
too
there.
many
There's
right.
a lot more now.
A lot more now than
I'd
there
like to
were 10 years ago.
Point out that when Cuff started, there was no South by Southwest. There was no
Wow.
Slam Dance.
Wow.
I mean, actually, the guys that started Slam Dance told me that we inspired them to start a festival because they met the film market in New York that IFP New York puts on every year. these 3 filmmakers were all at the market with their films, and they had all submitted to Sundance, but they had this conversation. They were like, what do we do if we don't get into Sundance? With, we spent all this money on these features. And I guess one of them said, well, these guys in Chicago just started a film festival, and the New York Underground Film Festival, which doesn't exist anymore, had started the same year that we did independently. And so they were aware of these 2 kind of like punk rock film festivals that had started up. And so they're like, well, why don't we just do that in Park City? And that's why Slam Dance exists.
But have a mission. It's not because of what Penny's saying about how there's so many.
Yeah, stand
that
out.
You stand out and make it something that you can stand behind for a time to come, so that when I'm telling you about our fest, if you talk to Bryan for a minute about Cuff, it's very clear how passionate he is about it. If you talk to me, it's like, well, if it ain't made here, we're not showing it. It's that, you have to have a specific mission statement if you want to start it. Just starting a film fest so that people can come out and tell you how great you are for showing their film is not, it'll run out of steam pretty quickly.
Even festivals like Slam Dance, they have changed their mission over the years.
Yeah.
They've refined it, and I think that's important to stay relevant
I
as
mean,
well.
But they're the anti-Sun,
we've
they're the
refined
foil to
what Cuff
Sundance.
is
Right.
over the years. I mean, when we started, I used that phrase earlier, the punk rock film festival kind of thing, and that's really where we came from, that kind of an attitude of like, do it yourself, kind of, or just. We used to joke that we started a film festival before we had actually even attended one, and we just kind of made it up as we went along. And over 20-some years, I've been to other festivals, and I've learned a lot. And there's a lot of things about what Cuff is like now that's very different than it was 22 years ago. And also the films have changed. Like in our early years, we were kind of really into this kind of, there was this thing in New York in the 80s called the cinema of transgression that was all about shock value, kind of like John Waters or post-John Waters kind of attitude. In the early years of Cuff, there was a lot of that kind of stuff, and you don't see a lot of that anymore. You see things more like Burn. It's
Good title.
The aesthetics of what I'm interested in, what the festival is about now have changed. That being said, I mean, if you show me something really good that's in that like transgressive mode and stuff, there's a part of me that's kind of still I'm still a little punk rock guy inside,
Great.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
My question is, when you watch these films, excuse me, how, where do you screen them? How big? Do you watch them off iPhone, in a theater, surround sound?
It really depends for me because I do work remotely a lot. So sometimes it's a computer monitor, sometimes it's onto a screen. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. We're hanging out here afterwards, and we're going to watch every damn film that gets submitted on this giant screen in full HD projector.
I use headphones.
Do you? Yeah, I'm a lot of laptop. And I have a big HD screen at home that I'll watch them on. I haven't watched on an iPhone or anything that small.
I wouldn't watch
for
a
the reason you
submission
groaned
that
about,
small.
because you just can't tell, you can't see what the film is. But it is, you're going to see. It's a lot of laptops, which is why I say that online screener. And by the way, the technology on laptop screens, I mean, films will look really, really good on a laptop. Do you know what I mean? I mean, don't feel like they're not going to get it, But if you have surround sound or something like that, that can be.
Yeah, I have a flat screen with surround sound at home, so I'll watch things that way. But I end up watching a lot of things on my laptop too. I work a day job besides working the festival, and fortunately I have a day job that I can have my laptop there, and so I'm watching submissions while I'm doing my other work, or not doing my other work.
Yep.
We do have a nice screening room at the film festival
You guys
offices,
do.
which when I'm kind of making final decisions or sitting down with other programmers to make final decisions, we'll watch a lot of films in the screening room as well.
I do wish I could watch more.
Yeah.
On kind of the big
I would
screen.
love to have a screening
But,
room in
yeah.
my house, but
I mean, we all got
film
we all
festivals
got
don't
into
pay that
this.
well.
programming thing because we like watch. That's something I said at the last panel like this I went on was when people think programmers don't watch their work. We got into this because we like watching films, so we're going to watch your films. Right?
Yeah.
We want to discover new things.
I think it comes back to what you guys were saying earlier too. It's like the technology isn't as important as the story and bringing you into the world.
Yeah.
So if you can as filmmakers get pulled into the world on a smaller screen, it's going to even speak more of your film than it being very showy and huge on the big
Because
screen.
if your film eventually goes through the festival circuit and then maybe, hopefully, we're talking about features here usually, but gets distribution and is watched, it's probably going to be watched on those types of screens at that end of the
That's true.
the cycle as well.
And this,
Which
the
is
day we're in.
also on the along the lines of what you're saying. I like going to screenings that are here. That's why we'll always go to Premiere, the thing you guys have in June, because it's a chance to see all these shorts on the big screen in rapid succession. Or if you're hosting a private screening of a film, I mean, I would be fine getting an email from someone saying, hey, by the way, we're showing this film. If I can't make it out, I'll try and send someone from our fest to go see it. Because along the lines of what you're saying, we want to see it in the best light possible whenever we can.
Great. Next question.
Thank you.
Hello, thanks for your insights today. I was wondering the pacing of submitting a short film or a film. Is it a turnoff if a film has already been accepted to a festival, or maybe there's a technical disqualification if a film's already been accepted, or is there appeal for a world premiere? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and it's something that we haven't really talked about
Right.
yet. For the Chicago International Film Festival, we require a Chicago premiere of the film. And that's kind of the public Chicago premiere. So, for example, we wouldn't disqualify films that had shown at the DePaul Premiere Festival, because that's kind of considered to be a DePaul screening.
Private event,
yeah. But besides the Chicago premiere, we do not have any premiere requirements, but certainly other film festivals do. So if you have a festival that you really want to screen at, it's definitely very wise to sort of look into that. And TRIBECA, for example, I know are very keen on having world premieres or at least US premieres of even their short films.
That's been changing a lot too, I've seen recently, and we didn't get into this as well, but also whether it's been online or not used to be a complete disqualifier, and that's changing a
That's
little bit as
changed,
well.
yeah.
Though it's not awesome if your film is actually available online for the public to view. I mean, I'll just say for me. I mean, just imagine a shorts program where half of the film, we're announcing the films, right? So we have to tell people what films we're going to show. And then if you could watch 7 of the 10 films online, that's kind of...
It actually doesn't bother me at all.
No, it doesn't bother you?
No. I mean, I just generally think that people aren't necessarily going to do that, and even if they do, they're still excited to see it in a theatrical presentation, and excited to see the other films that it's playing with. And I read up a little bit about this beforehand, and I think that now 2/3 of film festivals have eliminated their online
Oh, really?
exclusion criteria for shorts. And I think one of the things that was holding a lot of them back from doing that was that the Academy will not consider short films that have premiered online, but that's actually only, so in order to be considered by the Academy, your short has to have won a prize at an Academy certified festival.
Is Chicago International?
Chicago International is one for documentaries and narrative shorts. And once your film has won that award, your film can go online and it can still be eligible for Academy consideration.
So that's changed a little bit too.
Right.
Yeah, they used to be restricted at that.
And there is an allure to having a world premiere or a U.S. premiere. I mean, I don't,
Would that
and
be something that would tip it into a program, the program, or is that just kind of a?
that would help me.
Well,
I think
if
that would
all
help.
other things are equal,
Yeah.
then the newer, like the world premiere or the U.S. premiere or whatever. I mean, we have a little bit more flexibility on the premiere status than I think the international. We do ask for a Chicago premiere, but as I mentioned earlier, we're showing one film at the Underground Film Festival this year that played at the International Fest. that was, you know, we made that call. It was like, because
We
it's
say
also
it's preferable, you know, it's
Yeah.
preferable, and you'll find. I mean, most filmmakers, they kind of might be a little more selective about where they make their world premiere or their U.S. premiere, and then once that happens, then it tends to kind of open everything up a little bit more.
We had a case last year with a filmmaker who had been an alumni a few times in the past, sent me a work-in-progress version of a brand new film he was just finishing that I loved. And of course I wanted to program it. Shortly after I contacted him and said, I love the film, I want to show it, he got an acceptance to a bigger European shorts festival, I can't remember which one, that took it basically under the condition that it was going to be a world premiere. And he wrote me back and he wasn't sure what to do. What we ended up doing at CUF was we showed the film, but in the program book, it just said secret film. And it was secret film, mystery director, but the running time and everything else was exactly, and it was the synopsis of his film, but every time it said, the film is called Buffalo Juggalos. It's great. And every time in the synopsis that it said Buffalo Juggalo, we just inserted the word mystery film instead. And we even had a still from the film in the program book that said mystery film next to it. He won an award at CUF. And of course, after it premiered at this other European festival, I sent him an email and I said, so you won an award, can I just, at least on the awards page, list the name of your film? And he's like, well, I've already shown it at the other festival, so
Right.
yeah, whatever. You know, so if you look
Not
at
gonna
the
unshow it.
list of films that won, it'll say Buffalo Juggalo. But that was a weird case but we were like, he just wanted to come to Chicago and hang out and show it to us. So
That's
in
punk
some ways
rock.
we acted like as almost like a sneak preview at his first test audience, but you know. we
And
got to show it.
I'm sorry, just to contextualize it for young filmmakers, should we be choosy? Should we wait to submit to international or Sundance or whatever? And if we get a no, then submit to everything else? Or
No, I think submit it to other festivals, but if you're going to one of those festivals, everybody submits to like the winter, like the first, you know, the Sundance, Rotterdam, Berlin, kind of South by, you know, Slam Dance, all of those kind
it's
of are taking
complicated.
submissions around the same time. So you send it out and see.
You might also get a situation where your film is, say you submit to a lot of festivals and your film is accepted by, you know, a slightly lower tier festival. And I've certainly had filmmakers contact me and say, we've been accepted into X festival, is it possible to give us an early decision? And usually we are able to do that.
Yeah.
Because we want your film to reach as wide of an audience as possible, and we certainly don't want to hold your film back from screening while we're sort of still considering it.
I actually just got a text message before this all began tonight from a filmmaker that was accepted for CUF, and she wrote me to say, like, she just basically wanted to find out if we were you know, if we had to have the U.S., because at the time she submitted, it was the U.S. premiere. She just got accepted to another festival that's going to be before CUF, and she wanted to check and see if this was going to affect our decision. It's not. You know, I mean,
I think the key is, though, what you're hearing here from Penny and Bryan is that these filmmakers communicated.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So, you know,
Absolutely.
don't think like, oh, well, maybe they won't. Well, I told them it's the world premiere, and well, maybe they won't realize that it's showing it. No, you have to just
You
communicate.
have to let the programmer know for sure.
You might have to break a couple hearts along the way, you know, and that's okay. But because if you only submit to 3 fests, you know, these big 3 or whatever, and then you're waiting, you run the risk of just literally waiting like 2 years before your film shows anywhere, and then then it goes the other way. Now you're like, well, now I just want to show it somewhere. So now you actually wind up bypassing that whole those like second and that tier B, tier C, and now you're just like, okay, well, let's just go to a bar and show this thing. I just need people to see this.
So yeah, I think you're
gotta move
totally
on.
right. The communication is absolutely key, and if there's any doubt in your mind, then just reach out to the programmer.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you.
So I think that's all we have time for in questions. Do you guys have any?
How many people are behind that
I
column?
think there's just one more person. But
Well, if there's just
One more?
person,
One more.
I'll take
All
the
right.
question.
Come on. You guys don't
Last
mind?
one of the night. He's wearing a tie. He's wearing a tie.
All right, let's go for it.
Yeah, I just came from work, so I missed. My first question is really quick. I just came from work, and is this going to be up on YouTube? Because I missed the majority of this whole thing.
Oh, okay.
It is going to be on
Yes.
YouTube, right?
Okay.
it?
Yep.
Yeah.
I feel good about that. And then two other questions. I'll try to make them as quick as possible. The first one, in your guys' opinions, how many film festivals do you think you should submit to? And
Oh, in the
What's
course
your
of-
budget? Right?
I mean, I think that makes sense. Yeah, I was just kind of curious, like how many, like personally, would you submit to? Like 20?
I'm going to rephrase it just a little bit. I had a friend who went to a bazillion festivals with a documentary, and one piece of advice he likes to give to young filmmakers is know how much energy to put into your film, and know when it's time to say, I've run its course. The film has run its course. I can't put any more into this film. And I think that's kind of what he's getting at. Like, how long do you do that before you just go to the bar and show it?
That's a really tough question. I mean, at a certain point, your film's not going to be eligible anymore because a lot of festivals have a, made by date.
Right.
But what Wendy's saying about how much energy do you want to put into that film, I mean, you have to be honest with yourself about the film. I mean, that's what's, I think that which will dictate the energy, because you just have to be honest with yourself. Like, is this, because if you say, you know what, this is the best, this is a great film, this needs to be seen, I don't care what it takes, but it's gonna be, I want to be at X number of film festivals, and I believe so passionately about this film. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. As opposed to like, well, I made it so people should see it. Do you see how those are two dramatically different scenarios?
And that's a good point, because there's a lot of reasons to make a film that are valid that don't involve screening it at festivals.
Right.
Maybe it's just part of the learning process to make another film, to learn what you're doing better. Just because you made a film doesn't mean it's ready that you're ready to send those films out.
And don't necessarily make the festival programmers your first audience. Like, show it to people that you know. And I have a friend who just made a documentary, and she's hosting lots of private screenings with lots of different kind of groups of people that she knows have different taste, and getting feedback from everybody. And I think that can be really valuable.
There are films now, there are films that have successful stories that don't involve the festival circuit as how they get an audience.
Well, there's films that completely self-distribute online.
Yeah.
Great.
So it's all relative, but most films, I think, have about a year on the festival circuit and by then you're ready to make another film anyway.
And if your film does really well on the festival circuit, then it kind of gathers up its own energy, and programmers start reaching out to you and asking for it. So you could end up getting into festivals that you didn't even know about.
Well, yeah.
What other websites? Really, I'm sorry again, but like you guys mentioned Without a Box, and that was the first website I ever came across. But
Film Freeway is the other one that's really big now. There's several others.
There's a few others.
Fest Home and Film Freeway is the one that I'm really excited about right now.
Did they just turn off your mic? We're gonna let you talk, dude. We're gonna let you talk.
Would you say it's like second best to Without a Box?
I think it's surpassing.
I'd say Without a Box and Film Freeway are now kind of at that same level, if not Film Freeway. But I mean, most film festivals are not going to get rid of Without a Box, even if whether you do. I mean, it's just not going to happen. And eventually, Without a Box, unless they're
we'll talk about
just so dumb. Eventually, Without a Box has to be like, let's just make our site better. I don't know why they won't improve.
They haven't done a site update since it launched.
Yes,
I can't
it's
even
really
wrap my head around
bad.
it. But
they did introduce the online screeners at one point, but they're not good.
And the worst possible quality.
Yeah.
Yes.
Those are the only two sites you need to deal with, in my opinion. I don't know why you would deal with more than.
Some of the others are European.
Realport's another one.
I haven't used them.
Yeah, I think it depends. Some of the European festivals use them, I think.
Yeah.
I'm a Midwest guy, so I don't even know I don't like reading, so I just don't watch a lot of internet.
And put your film on Vimeo, password protected. I mean, that's the best quality, right?
Yep.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, thank you guys very, very much. This was incredibly informative.